Blair White. God, one of my favorite content creators. I absolutely adore trans content creators who talk positively about trans people. I think they're wonderful, in fact. Actually, I am just a fan of trans people talking positively about trans people. That stuff makes me happy. Robbie says, only lost a little, but now I have more cleanup after. Artemis says, ugh. Why ugh? Hold on. Before we go into anything, I want to show you guys wonderful fan art. Loading like dial-up. From Cricket. Said, I had a vision and it took many tries to get it done. Should I torture myself and color it? That is a waistline that would make Oda jealous. That is just me as, like, I understand that's supposed to be me in a dress, but with that waistline, I'm going to be honest, that is me as a One Piece character. The One Piece waistline is legendary. Oh, God. That does look good, though. Thank you very much, Cricket. I appreciate it. If y'all want your fan art to be shown in a future video, the best way to do so is to drop it into the fan art section of the Discord. With that said, let's go ahead and get to talking about Blair White again. Wonderfully trans-positive content creator. Let's see what she has to say.
I hate to say I told you so,
oh,
but I also kind of love it. Hold on. I feel like I'm doing a lot of these videos this year, these just like I told you so videos, and not to come across as arrogant or whatever, I just believe in the truth and I believe the truth matters. And so if you're ever vindicated,
I'm not arrogant, but I'm also right so often. Things that Blair White and Asmongold both say when they are wrong.
When you were right, especially when you were fighting against a sea of demons, ogres, and big backs who were threatening your...
Is your point that they are ugly? Like, is that what your point is? Is it just that you do not like these people because they are unattractive? Because if that's the point, I don't find that to be a very salient criticism of other people. Other people can be unattractive or have traits that could be considered more masculine or more feminine than they would otherwise prefer and still have perfectly cogent points.
Your life and hating you for years and saying horrific things about you because you had the audacity to speak the truth. I believe you deserve a quick moment to just be like, told you so. So this is my told you so. Trans has absolutely become a trend. Why are fewer young people identifying as trans?
Wait. Hold on. Blair. You are aware that people identified as trans before and after the current year, right? And you are aware that more people will identify openly as trans when they are living in a world that is more accepting of trans people. Like, this is just the left-handedness thing, right? When left-handedness was considered an evil, abominable thing, we had fewer left-handed people. And then suddenly, when it was considered, you know, no longer a problem to be left-handed, no longer demonic, suddenly we had more people who were left-handed. It doesn't mean that there was an epidemic of left-handed people. We just happened to have plenty of people who were already left-handed and no longer were being forced to pretend that they weren't. Same thing with trans people. Right now, the current administration is not very kind towards trans people. I actually have friends who are trans, and even though they are openly trans in the sense that they will say they are trans on social media that is not connected directly to their face, and they will say that they are trans, like when they are streaming, they will not utter that when they are in the workplace because it is more dangerous for them to do so. We are seeing more reports of it being dangerous for people to tell others that they are trans, especially if you are in the South. So Blair, I really want to know what study you're looking at, so let's see.
This is, you know, there's a lot of articles coming out this week. You may have seen these sorts of headlines because there's new data, the numbers are in, and it's, you know, you don't need the numbers if you've been subscribed.
Yes, you do. You do need the numbers. You always need the numbers. Every single one. Also, if we're talking about the Manhattan Institute, said the 15th Watcher says, but it's not dangerous, though. It's not dangerous to let people who would otherwise be bigoted to you, let them know that you have the identity that would be the subject for their bigotry. You do not see any inherent danger in that? Is that what your point is, the 15th Watcher? Because if that point were made by the 1st through 14th Watcher, I would call them idiots. Jessa says, I don't care what state she lives in, but is it a trans-affirming state? I don't know. I'm unaware. The only thing I know of where states and conservatives are concerned right now is everybody's fleeing New York and everybody's fleeing California. That's the one thing that I know is like shared across those particular conservaverses at the moment in regards to states. But the study that she's looking at is from the Manhattan Institute. So I'm going to stealth my druid here so I don't have a third dead druid, because that could very much happen. The majority of people in America are not transphobic, and those who are frowned upon. So 15th Watcher, you understand that nothing that you said disproves what I said, right? The majority of people in America are not transphobic. I agree with that. And the majority of situations where somebody could find themselves in are not dangerous for them being trans. Sure. That doesn't change the fact that there are areas in America where that is considered more dangerous to publicly out yourself in. None of your words disprove my words at all. But congratulations. Like, that's the thing. I agree, America is more progressive than other places, but it does not mean, like, as an example. So this Monday, my girlfriend, Saki, had to go in for dental surgery. We originally thought that she was going to be going in just to get a dental checkup, but we found out that the thing that was wrong with her mouth needed to be taken care of immediately. So I went in to the office with her, and I was told that while they were doing the procedure, while they were doing the numbing and everything, to wait outside. Not outside in the waiting area, but there was a little hallway with some chairs, and that's where I was waiting. So while I'm sitting in there, I am just hearing the staff. Thankfully, not the staff that were working on my girlfriend, but the staff at this particular dental hospital talking about trans people, specifically talking about Riley Gaines. Going on and on about how trans women are not women, they're actually men, and if they were failing so hard in men's sports, that's why they needed to go to women's sports. Basically, every single little shitty piece of right-wing information that you can think of. Now, I do not know what content creators or reels or what have you that the staff here watched, and to be fair, the person who was mostly waxing lyrical about this was just one young woman. And thankfully, most everybody else seemed to be just doing the smile and nod thing instead of just, you know, going on about it as well. But having to sit there and hear it and basically wanting to get up and go, okay, so you understand that you're going to be working on a patient in the other fucking room right now who is trans. And whether or not they can hear you, this is super inappropriate conversation for each one of you dingle hoppers to be having. But I recognize that having that confrontation right there doesn't really accomplish anything. And I don't want to create a problem when it comes to the person who's about to be taking tools into my girlfriend's mouth. So, see, Jeopardy says it doesn't matter if the people aren't transphobic when the government is. How so? I'm not too up to date with that. Wait, 15th Watcher, hold on. Are you American? Because I gotta ask you this one. Hold on. Because what Jet Fatigue is referring to is likely this. You are. Oh, okay, cool. So, in 2025, we currently have 1,112 proposed anti-trans bills in Congress. 506 are currently active. 124 have successfully passed. 382 of them have failed, which is good. What are these bills? Do you want me to go over what all 1,000 bills say exactly? Is that what you would like me to do? Do you believe that that is a reasonable ask of any human being? Lenari says, have you heard of the Trevor Project? Have you heard of bathroom bills? So, bathroom bills are certainly one of them. But let's go ahead and go into what these bills are, because there actually is a breakdown by category of which bills we're talking about. 277 of the bills target educational settings. They aim to deny students name and pronoun autonomy, forcibly outing trans students to their parents, and basic gender identity education, among other goals. So bills like this, because we've seen a couple of these on the channel, Bills like this tend to be worded in such a way that teachers are not allowed to use a student's preferred name. They have to use a student's legal name. Now, this obviously creates complications when it comes to things like nicknames, but this also creates complications if a student is trying to fly under the radar because they are living in a bigoted household and they do not want their parents to know that they are trans. Because if you are in a bigoted household, then the correct thing to do for your own personal safety is to fly under the radar for as long as you can until you can get to safety and then be your more authentic self. 15 Watcher says, not the Trevor Project, but the bathroom restrictions would make sense. If you have male genitalia, you should not go to a female bathroom. Why? Why? Also, you haven't heard of the Trevor Project, but you have plenty of opinions about trans people? That's really wild. That's really silly. The number one... Like, one of the number one trans-affirming charities in the entirety of the United States, and you do not know what it is. That is not indicative of you being a bad person, but that is indicative, at least a little bit, of the level of research you've done into your opinions on trans people. Also, in terms of male genitalia, oh boy, to prevent assault? Oh, so do you think penises cause assault? It is easy to assault a woman with male genitalia? Do you believe penises cause assault? Let's see here. Give me a second. Here, let's go over this one. We're going to stick to just the bathroom bills. We're going to stop. Nope. Everybody in chat, stop. Everybody in chat, stop. Because I promise you, none of you are going to change a person's mind by trying to engage in fighting words. Not a single one of you will. You don't believe they cause assault, but it's easier to assault with one? Really? So... what you have done is you have given a single anecdote. You and I can give singular anecdotes forever and never come to a conclusion. So instead, how about we look at some data? Data's cool. Let's go. Yeah, you have a very narrative visual result, but okay. Let's go ahead and see here. What do we have? They at least help by supplying some safe spaces for women. I promise you, nobody who has the intent of raping a woman is going to be deterred by a sign that says no men allowed. Not a single one. Not even a little bit. Despite widespread discrimination against lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender people, most state laws do not explicitly protect LGBTQ people from discrimination in employment, housing. Let's see here. Non-discrimination laws that explicitly protect LGBTQ people have been enacted in 18 states, more than 200 municipalities, with no increase in public safety incidents. Additionally, harming someone in a restroom is already illegal, and updating non-discrimination laws to protect LGBTQ people does not change that. By contrast, bathroom ban laws compromise public safety and cannot be enforced without invading citizen privacy. And the vagueness of those laws may provide unchecked power to law enforcement officers or even embolden private citizens to take the law into their own hands. These laws leave transgender people even more vulnerable to discrimination, harassment, and violence. So, okay. I will note, that is not data. That is simply an argument. Additional resources, You know what? Hold on. I know who's got this. The staff of a place will be concerned if they see a male entering a woman's restroom. All right, 15th Watcher. Real quick. You and me. Just you and me, buddy. Just you and me. I want to have this conversation. Are you saying that my girlfriend, who 100% presents female, completely, are you saying that my girlfriend should have to go into a male restroom? Is that your argument? Because that seems to be your argument. There we go. Aha. Studies are cool. Studies are cool. Let's look at the abstract of this restroom and locker room restriction bill. Background: transgender and gender non-binary adolescents experience high rates of peer victimization. I'm going to pause on that real quick so I can read what you said. I am not sure, but I suppose it would be to the solution would be to implement more single-person restrooms. All right, cool. So 15th Watcher, are you familiar with what a Mott and Bailey is? Because you have just engaged in a Mott and Bailey. If I scroll up to your previous conversation, your previous statement was transgender women, because you said males, transgender women should be restricted from women's bathrooms. to prevent assault. My counter was, do you believe that my girlfriend, a transgender woman, should be forced out? Your response was to abandon your previous position, which is what a Mott and Bailey is. You abandon an indefensible position in order to retreat to an area where you have moved the goalpost, where that goalpost is now easier to defend. Because the statement, we should implement more single-person bathrooms, is a different statement. It's also not really feasible, because in order to do that, you would need to go into several businesses, private or otherwise, and start hollowing out areas and creating more plumbing, all for the purpose of accomplishing something that's already accomplished. You said you were not sure. Exactly. But the point of a Mott and Bailey is that you begin with a indefensible but inflammatory position, and then you retreat afterwards to a more defensible position when pressed. That is what a Mott and Bailey is. I just want you to recognize it is a rhetorical thing you have done. As opposed to defending the position that you previously had, you retreated from it when pressed. That'll answer your question? I will say yes. So you believe that my girlfriend should be put into a male restroom. Okay, cool. Let's hold on to that. So you believe that men are more likely to engage in sexual assault on women, right? Because if that is the case, I believe it is based on what you have said there. If somebody who presents as a woman, looks like a woman, sounds like a woman, acts like a woman, whatever that fucking means, if that person is in a restroom and there are males in that restroom, is that person not now more likely to experience sexual assault? After all, your argument was that men are more likely to engage in sexual assault, are more capable of doing it, and if that's the only factor that we're looking at, then surely putting a trans woman in a male bathroom makes them more likely to be sexually assaulted. Back to the study. The prevalence of sexual assault in this population has not been established. Some schools restrict transgender and non-binary students from using restrooms and locker rooms that match their gender identity, with unknown effects on sexual assault risk. We tested whether these restrictions were associated with the 12-month prevalence of sexual assault victimization. Methods. The survey responses were analyzed from 3,673 transgender and non-binary U.S. adolescents in grades 7 through 12 who participated in the cross-sectional 2017 LGBTQ teen study. We estimated the association between school restroom and locker room restrictions of sexual assault, adjusting for potential social and behavioral confounders, using logistic regression. We also tested potential mediators. Results. The 12-month prevalence of sexual assault was 26.5 amongst transgender boys and 27% among non-binary youth assigned female at birth, but 18% amongst transgender girls and 17% amongst non-binary youth that were assigned male at birth. Youth whose restrooms and locker room was restricted were, say it with me now, more likely to experience sexual assault compared to those without restrictions, with risk ratios of 1.26. Conclusions. Pediatricians should be aware that sexual assault is highly prevalent in transgender and non-binary youth, and that restrictive school restroom and locker room policies may be associated with that risk. That means that the scenario you presented of my girlfriend needing to go into the male restroom exclusively, we have the data that shows over the course of a year-long period of study that her chance of being sexually assaulted actually goes up quite significantly. Data suggests that you are incorrect, because what your argument is supposed to be is, I want to protect women. But what your argument ends up becoming, the manifestation of your argument, is, I would like transgender women assaulted. Now, I know that that's likely not your intent, but that is the manifestation of that. And there's all kinds of legal ragamuffin shit that can lead to this. So, for instance, in California, it used to be a crime, like a hard crime, to intentionally give someone AIDS. And that sounds very reasonable. That sounds incredibly reasonable. However, the reality was that by implementing that law, the rate of AIDS went up in the state of California. The reason the rate went up, and I understand a lot of you are being very enthusiastic, but you don't need to be. The reason that the state of AIDS, the likelihood of getting it, went up in California was because the workaround to the law was to not know that you had it. You see, what society ended up doing as a result was simply not getting tested for STDs, which inadvertently increased the prevalence of STDs in the population, because people would have sex without knowing they had an STD. Because the way the law was written was that if you knowingly gave it to someone, it was considered, forcing a disease on someone. That is considered a terrible thing to do. The right wing of America freaked the fuck out when California lowered the charge for that particular crime down to a misdemeanor, from a felony to a misdemeanor. Right-wing America freaked out about 6 years ago over that. The reality was that the rate of procuring AIDS went down as a result of making sure that you were no longer criminally penalized at a felony level for giving somebody AIDS. It sounds backwards, but the reality is when people felt safer getting tested, they had all the more reason to get tested. Yeah, also, I don't think you understand that, the majority of rapes happen as a power fantasy, not about individual pleasure. You get off on the power, whether it's your hands, whether it's your fucking genitalia, what have you. There's all kinds of reasons that you can find where somebody does that. In fact, actually, if you've ever seen Kill to Kill, I'm going to give a spoiler. There's a main character in Kill to Kill who is sexually assaulted, and the sexual assault is done almost entirely because of a power fantasy that the assaulter has towards that individual. And that individual's entire, big part of her story arc is overcoming her rapist. But anyway, Rhino came in clutch. I would offer a suggestion, 15th Watcher, because it sounds like you aim to be a reasonable person. Bagosi says, I was going to say something, but then I saw Suris more than had this handle, so I let Suris each Suris is a good teacher, my hairy communist ass, and got me more mellowed out. I don't think I'm a good teacher. I don't think I would call myself a good teacher. I would just call myself somebody who gives a shit. That said, I'm going to offer a suggestion real quick. 15th Watcher. Suggestion is going to be a very, very simple one. You seem to be well-intentioned, and as you seem to be well-intentioned, are you wanting to know more? Do you want to look into any of the papers in regards to any of these arguments? Because we can have the rhetorical back and forth sparring, but that's probably not going to get us anywhere. What can get us somewhere is this. So this is, thankfully, a compiled list of sources, and I'm going to send you two of these. Give me a second. One from Rhino, and one from Nominal Naomi. Assuming that hers is still available. There we go. So both of these, one of these is a combination of links, which is the one that I sent you from Vice Rhino, categorized by what the research is. If there is a topic about trans stuff that you are concerned about, that you want to learn more about, there's information here that might be able to help you. If you want something that is more of a single, holistic bit of reading, Naomi has a wonderful document here with everything laid out as if it were one giant research paper with one overarching thesis. But it also makes sense. Naomi does this for research purposes in general. Rhino collects sources so that he has better arguments. Naomi is very much more of a researcher, hardline researcher at heart. I trust both of them completely with their research methods because both of them dwarf my abilities by a country mile, and I have an immense amount of respect for both of these individuals. I've thrown the links over at you in the chat. You have access to them now. If you want to engage in any more verbal sparring, I would suggest doing so after a little bit of reading. I'm not trying to do the standard leftist, you haven't studied enough theory to verbally spar with me, mister. But just in general, I do think that conversations about these topics tend to be a lot more fruitful when you're operating with a gun that is aimed properly and not one that you've been hip firing with. I hope it helps. Also, for anybody else in the chat, I really appreciate y'all's enthusiasm. It makes sense. A bunch of allies and, of course, trans people are going to want to come to the defense of their fellow trans people. And we all have the general knee-jerk reaction of somebody coming in and being a problem and needing to be taken care of. If you don't see the red flags of that, I think that a normal conversation, person to person, is far more fruitful than the Reddit response, let's try to own each other, dunked, get wrecked liberal shit. Like, I'm over that. That kind of blood sporting is fun once in a while in a controlled environment. A chat like this is not a place where it's going to actually function. If your goal is to educate someone, your weapon cannot also be a gun. And yeah, we have had plenty of deliberate trolls. I understand where the knee-jerk reaction is coming from. I really do. I wholly get it. But it's not always necessary. It's still weird to me that every time these topics come up, it's only about trans women. So, no, it's not. It's not weird at all. It's actually not. It's easier for society to aim that weapon. You're in Georgia, I'm in Georgia too? Hell yeah, north or south side? Lenari says, I'm not looking forward to the day some busybody sees my lip hair and assumes they can harass me. Got enough of that in elementary school. That's another thing, like, with the bathroom bills thing, somebody's gonna see a woman with PCOS and immediately think that they're trans. Because PCOS affects the way that that your hormones balance. And so women who have PCOS and are suffering from that because that causes a lot of pain also tend to have things like extra facial hair that's thicker than they would be normally comfortable with. Like, what is the music? It's from Donkey Kong. That actually does beg a question, 15th Watcher. Do you, PCOS? Yeah, PCOS. Oh yeah, the trans investigators who are 100% wrong 100% of the time, but can always tell. I don't even think it's that they're wrong 100% of the time. It's the fact that any of them can be wrong any percent of the time, which is my problem. Anyway, back to here. Only PCOS I use is Windows. It does beg a question, 15th Watcher. Do you play Magic the Gathering? Yeah, polycystic ovarian disease. Zoe Bastard says transphobes tend to paint trans women as predators, so it's really easy to see them as a weapon. Trans men are infantilized, so they use that in a different way. Fair. Watcher says I don't play it. No, that is my primary thing that I do, generally speaking. But Black to Blair. Back to Blair.
To Blair White for the past decade. You don't need the numbers if you're part of the Blair White army because you just saw it coming because...
Okay, I love this rhetorical tactic. What she's done here is she has said that you do not need access to data. You do not need access to verifiable information if you are part of her in-group. Now, I understand that she's saying this hyperbolically, right? Blair's not really trying to tell you that the substitute for knowledge is watching her videos. But at the same time, it is very, very frustrating hearing a content creator say that instead of the much more honest position of saying, hey, the research says this. Although the paper that she's referencing is from the Manhattan Institute. She assumes her audiences don't change. Oh boy. Now that I've got my webwood egg, let me stealth over here so my druid doesn't die once more. But let's go ahead and look at the Manhattan Institute real quick. Let's see what we can find in regards to them. One sec. What are they? Because a good thing to do anytime somebody throws a study at you, or, sorry, a good thing to do when somebody throws a study at you is read the study. But if they're just gonna pop something on screen for a bit of a second and not actually, you know, go into it, that's usually a bit of a red flag for me. Interesting. Okay. So, that's why she's getting the information she is. So check this out. So what is the Manhattan Institute? The Manhattan Institute is an American 501c3 conservative think tank. Their entire purpose is to spin data to make it sound more appealing for right-wingers' issues. Okay. That's cool. So we're just using literal corrupted data and operating with that.
We saw it coming, but a surprising shift is taking place in the gender and sexual identities of young Americans. The Center for Heterodox Social Science says that since 2023, both trans...
Again, this is from the Manhattan Institute, so bear in mind, we are drinking from a poisoned well. The Manhattan Institute's mission statement is to be a conservative think tank. But let's see what she says here.
And queer identification have dropped sharply within Gen Z. So here's the graph, as you can see. So we're looking at between the end of 2019 and 2020. I wonder what happened then. Nothing much, right? There is this huge spike, and it starts going up, all the way until you get to 2023, which definitely, according to my own just like recollection, did feel like it peaked in 2023. Like, this graph feels right because it just matches my experience and what I've seen as someone who covers this obviously a lot. So in 23, almost 10% of young people in schools were identifying as trans or non-binary. Now,
I can pull up graphs too, Blair. I can pull up graphs too. Like, just as she's speaking, okay, Blair, I wonder, is there maybe some precedent for people who have had an identity that was lambasted by society at one point, shunning that identity, and then when society stopped lambasting them, showing that they had that identity all along? What a weird one. Tega says there's a recent 2-year study that came from Utah to support trans-affirming care. Right, so that study actually has an interesting history. So one of the few conservative politicians who's actually pro-trans was in Utah. And he tried to fight against a ban on trans sports in Utah, and then eventually acquiesced, letting a ban go through, and then saying that we needed further research, and got research pushed through, effectively. You may be talking about that study, the study that came as a direct result of that ban that happened from one of the few pro-trans Republicans in the country. If that's the one I'm thinking of, then the study you're referring to actually has that history, which is wild and weird to me.
I have a lot of empathy for Gen Z. Well, first of all, let's get to the positive. It is now dipping all the way down. 2025, it's nearly half, but it's only...
Is that a positive, though? Is fewer people being comfortable explaining who their authentic self is that actually a positive? I don't see that as a positive, Blair. I don't see how that's a positive. That just feels like... So there is a aspect of conservatism where problems can be ignored if they are swept under the rug. We see this operate with homelessness all the time. Instead of trying to actually help homeless people, many conservative policies, and even some liberal policies in regards to homeless people, tend to be about moving them out of the area where they are visible. Sweep the problem under the rug so society doesn't complain about it, and then they can vote for you again in the next election. You didn't solve the homelessness problem, you just got it out of the view of people who have money. So, what does this study mean? Did you solve the trans problem? Are people now coming to their senses from the trans paranoia? Or, alternatively, are they simply uncomfortable with showing people that they are trans because it is now potentially a safety issue for them? Because it would seem to be the latter, to me. Based on the studies we've done into left-handedness, based on prior precedent, that's where I would lean.
Too about what it was in 2021. So still some work to do. However, I have a lot of empathy for Gen Z, like I was about to say. This is a generation that was denied things like prom, denied graduations, really important milestones in becoming a young adult. And so,
You know, it's funny. First of all, she makes really wet mouth noises, and it's really starting to grate on me. Thank God for background music. Secondly, when you mention that, oh, well, these people were denied prom, they were denied all this, it's weird to hear that from a person whose political side wants to gut public education and replace it with either private schooling or, more likely, homeschooling. Forms of education that likely would lead to people missing out on these, quote, important milestones just as often, if not more often.
oh, I always knew like it would have to be turned around. This and many other things that.
Paige says, yeah, the mouth noises are out of hand. Yeah, but, you know, I also feel like there's maybe a part of Blair's audience that are actually listening to the mouth noises in a weird fetishistic way. Because, like, think about it. Blair's audience is the audience that is more likely to fetishize trans people. We see this a lot when CPAC comes to town. When the conservative groups come to town, we see that the servers for Grindr go down. We see that trans people, gay people, anybody who's on any of these apps that are either looking for sexual companionship or people who happen to be in the actual sex work industry, they get a lot of work during the time that CPAC comes to town. Conservatives fetishize trans people a lot, and it's really weird. You get that strange combination of wanting to deny people their rights between trans people, gay people, etc., but also absolutely adoring them from a sexual point of view. And now, consider that audience is Blair White's audience. She is a conservative influencer. She sells conservatism to her audience, and her audience knows she's trans. She has publicly let her audience know she's trans. She's publicly let her audience know that she still has a wiener. She has publicly let that information be a thing that is there. And while that is respectable in its own right, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But when you have an audience that is willing to fetishize that, historically, put two and two together. Paige says she said that? Yes. No, there was one video where she was doing an FAQ, basically, and she was asked about her genitalia. And she confirmed it, and then her boyfriend, I think it was in the room with her, and I think her words during that were just like, yeah, he knows what I have down there. Like, I've only seen 20 or 30 Blair White videos total, but I do remember that one. Either I did a video on it, or like Zan or Vosh or somebody else did a video on it, and I watched that. One or the other. You don't hate watch her? I wish I didn't. I think I'd live a happier life if I didn't. I mean, it explains why they see trans existence as inherently sexual instead of just as human beings. Yeah, when you fetishize something, it becomes very hard to separate it from the sexual aspect of it. As he says, they want her OnlyFans address. I don't know if she even has one. Too bad you need to keep up with these scripters. Yeah, basically. Bop.
That were afflicting Gen Z. The way that a pandemic turned people trans needs to be studied.
Wait, do you think a pandemic turned them trans? Or is it the fact that we just came off of the Donald Trump presidency and we happen to have one of the most LGBTQ affirming politicians in United States history, and that politician was the president of the United States? Say what you will about Joe Biden. He was weak on a billion things, but somehow, paradoxically, he was really good on LGBTQ issues in the last 10 years. It doesn't bother me that in an environment where you have a more trans-affirming president who publicly revoked Donald Trump's trans ban in the military, it is wild to me that anybody would see anything other than just basic-ass cause and effect there. The left-hand cause and effect. Oh, we have a more trans-affirming president? Guess it's okay to come out. Oh, we have a president who publicly shames them and calls them terrible things on television? Guess it's not safe to come out. Lenari says, Biden, that I didn't realize? Yeah. Like, for all of his failings, there were two things that Biden did really well by. He did really well by unions, even when he literally made them work through strike. He actually made sure that their demands were met afterwards. That's what happened with the railroad situation. He was good by unions, and he was good by LGBTQ people. That's at least something. PJ Blazer says the pandemic also caused a lot of divorces. Maybe the 50% divorce rate should be looked at. Oh, that's another thing. That's another thing. Does Blair not think it's even a little strange that having a bunch of people who are locked inside their home for a longer period of time might have more time to wrestle with their personal identity? Because that's what I would think as well. Like, not only do you have a more trans-affirming president, but you also have more people who are actively having inner monologues with themselves because they don't have many other options. They are inside. Lenari says, do we think she says anything she actually believes? I feel like there is a point in time where the brain rot becomes so unavoidable that you just start consuming your own supply, personally. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. It's better than giving ChatGPT your best friend. God, I hate listening to the New World. What?
You guys already know how broken the media landscape is right now. Between misinformation.
Okay. And is this where she has a Ground News sponsorship? Yeah, this is where she has Ground News sponsorship. Are we really only getting up to the Ground News sponsorship? Like, she literally just had an intro where her argument for the COVID pandemic thing is a single video showing that a person looked like a guy in 2020 and looked like a girl in 2025. Okay. If that's the extent that we can get from Blair White, I realize now why I am so much better at this when I'm doing an individual response. I guess it makes sense for Ground News to advertise for both sides. Yep. Oh, Ground News sponsors basically everybody. Please, God, educate yourselves. When the zombie apocalypse comes, MAGAs are going to be out in the streets saying, bite me. You know, that happened in World War Z. You had Quislings that just, like, went out and acted like zombies, and some of them just wanted to be bit to be with their families. Fucking strange. If that's as far as we can get into the Blair White video in 50 minutes, I am ashamed of myself. But maybe it'd be a good idea for there to be 2 videos here. I don't know. Blair's point seems to be, I don't understand how left-handedness works, and I also don't understand how introspection works. Despite also being a person who has publicly admitted that she knew she was trans since she was like 4 or 6. Okay. Hey, you made it to the end. I want to give an extra thanks to the patrons who allow me to do this full time. I want to thank Aaron Rail, Astral, Britzkrieg, Jemshin, Poundini, Red Joker, Victoria, Jonas, Craig, Tarika, Fireshard, Smiling GM, John, Dren Hadamada, Creeper, Sagittarius, you know I'm not saying that last part, Valis of Sereth, Ottoman Angel, Rooster Rachel, and Fire Panda, who are all my $20 and up patrons.